My name is Joel Carver. I'm 34 years old, and I live in Hamilton, Ontario, in a two-bedroom apartment on the east side that costs more than it should for what you get. I work as a site safety coordinator for a mid-sized construction company called Meridian Building Group. My job is to walk job sites, check equipment, fill out incident reports, and make sure nobody gets hurt doing something that should have been caught in a morning briefing. It's not exciting. I don't design anything. I don't manage budgets or give presentations to clients. I just make sure the scaffolding is rated right and that everyone goes home with all their fingers. Most people in the office don't know my name. The guys on site do, because I'm the one who makes them stop what they're doing when something looks wrong. But in the building where the desks and meetings happen, I'm mostly just the guy who emails you when your safety training has expired. I got used to being background noise a long time ago. After my brother's accident, I got used to it even faster. Marcus died on a job site 6 years ago. Not one of ours. He was doing roofing for a subcontractor in Brantford, and a harness anchor failed. He was 29. He had a daughter who had just turned 2. At the funeral, I remember standing at the back of the room thinking I would do everything differently, that I would pay attention, that I would show up, that I wouldn't let another Tuesday afternoon pass without it meaning something. And then I went home, and the weeks went by, and I did what most people do. I got very good at being careful. Not careful in a brave way. Careful in the way where you keep your feelings small enough that losing them won't break you. I didn't let myself get close to people for a long time after that, until Rachel Benoit started working at Meridian. She joined the project coordination team about 2 years ago. 32 years old, French-English bilingual, grew up in Sudbury and moved to Hamilton for her partner. She had this way of running a project debrief where she'd catch every loose end before anyone else noticed it existed. She was the kind of person who brought an extra pen to every meeting because she knew someone would forget theirs. She didn't draw attention to herself, but if she wasn't in the room, you could feel it. The first time she talked to me outside of work context, she noticed I'd been skipping lunch for 3 days straight because we were short-staffed on a large commercial site, and I was covering 2 shifts back to back. She left a container of leftover pea soup on my desk with a sticky note that said, "Eat something or I'll file an incident report on you." I laughed out loud in an empty office. I kept the sticky note for 2 weeks before I finally made myself throw it out. Rachel was engaged to a man named Callum Bryce. He was a financial analyst at a firm downtown. Tall, good suit, confident in the way that reads as charming from a distance and something else up close. He'd pick her up from the office sometimes, and I'd see them through the lobby window. He talked and she nodded. He gestured and she adjusted her bag. It was the kind of dynamic that's easy to miss if you're not paying attention. I was paying attention. I didn't have a right to be, but I was. They'd been together for 4 years. Rachel told me once, casually, that she'd given up a project management opportunity in Ottawa because he didn't want to leave Hamilton. She said it the same way you'd say you skipped dessert, like it was a minor thing. I didn't say anything. I just added a little more coffee to my cup and listened. When wedding invitations went around the office, I got one. A cream envelope with her handwriting on the outside. "Joel, I'd really love to have some familiar faces there. Hope you can make it." I almost put it straight in the recycling. Nobody wants to watch someone they've been quietly carrying feelings for walk toward a future with somebody else. But Rachel had this way of meaning what she said, and I knew she actually wanted people there. So I ironed the one good shirt I owned, borrowed my neighbor's car because my truck had a check engine light that had been on since February, and drove to St. Christopher's Anglican Church in Burlington on a Saturday afternoon in October. The church was beautiful. Old stone, high windows, maple trees outside, still holding their color. I sat near the back. Family up front, close friends in the middle, people like me at the edges where we belong. I counted maybe 180 guests. String quartet, white flowers, the whole thing arranged with the kind of precision that takes months. Rachel came down the aisle on her father's arm, and she looked the way people look when they've put every part of themselves into a single moment. Not just the dress, which was simple and exactly right for her, but her face, the way she was present. She'd made a life out of showing up fully, and she was doing it here too, even now, in front of everyone who loved her. The groom didn't show. 10 minutes. 20. The string quartet looped back through their warm-up pieces. The minister kept his expression neutral, professional. Rachel's father leaned over and spoke quietly to the maid of honor. The maid of honor checked her phone, then checked it again, then walked quickly to the vestibule. When she came back, her face told the story before her feet did. She handed Rachel a phone. I couldn't see Rachel's face from where I was sitting, but I saw her shoulders, and I saw the exact moment they dropped. Later I learned the message was a voice note. Callum didn't even type it out. He said he couldn't go through with it, that he'd been unhappy for a long time, that he was sorry, that he hoped she understood. 2 minutes and 14 seconds. 4 years and a voice note. Someone behind me, near the back, said in a voice just loud enough to carry, saw this coming. A woman next to him made a noise that wasn't quite a laugh but was close enough. Rachel turned around to face the church. I don't know what she was looking for. Maybe she was just trying to find something solid to look at while her legs kept working. Her eyes moved across the room, and for 1 second they landed on me. I don't know what happened next, except that I stood up. I wasn't thinking about how it would look. I wasn't thinking about anything except that I had watched my brother carried out of a building in Brantford on a Tuesday afternoon, and I had stood in the back of a room and not been able to do one single thing. And here was someone I cared about, standing at the front of a church full of people, some of whom were already whispering, and I could do something. I walked down the aisle, not quickly, just steadily, one foot in front of the other. I was aware of the quiet that fell across the room as people noticed. I kept my eyes on Rachel. She stared at me. "Joel, what are you doing?" I stepped up beside her. The minister looked at me with an expression that said he had seen a great many things in this church, but not this. I spoke clearly, not loudly. "I know this isn't what anyone planned, but you shouldn't have to leave here alone. If you want me to go, I'll go. Say the word. But if you need someone to stand here with you right now, I'm not going anywhere." She looked at me for a long moment. Her bouquet was trembling slightly. I could hear someone crying in the front row quietly. "Why?" she whispered. "Because you left a container of soup on my desk when I hadn't eaten in 3 days, I said. "And because you don't deserve this." Something shifted in her face. Not happiness, not yet. But the particular look of someone who has been bracing for impact and just realized the floor is still there. Her father, Henri Thibodeau, stood up from the front row. He was a broad-shouldered man in his 60s who drove 4 hours from Sudbury that morning and had spent the last 20 minutes with his jaw set so tight I could see it from across the church. He looked at the empty space where Callum should have been. Then he looked at me. "If my daughter chooses to continue," he said, voice steady as a load-bearing wall, "then she has my blessing to do so." Rachel reached for my hand. Her fingers were cold. She held on like she was deciding something. "Okay," she said to the minister, "let's continue." The minister explained gently that the marriage license had Callum's name, and there was nothing legally binding that could happen that afternoon. What he could offer was a ceremony of intention, a public commitment, a promise witnessed by everyone in the room. The paperwork, if we both agreed, could come later. When it was time, I didn't try to say something romantic. I looked at Rachel and said what was actually true. "I promise I will never treat your feelings like a voice note. I promise I will show up, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. I don't know what comes after today, but I know you deserved better than what happened in this room, and I intend to do better." Rachel looked at me for a long moment before she spoke. "I don't know you well enough yet to make the promises I made for today," she said quietly, "but I know what it means when someone stands up, and I promise I won't forget it." The silence after that lasted about 4 seconds. Then someone in the middle rows started clapping, and it spread, and by the time it reached the back of the church, it was the kind of applause that doesn't feel performed. Rachel's mother, Marguerite Thibodeau, was crying into a handkerchief. Her father sat back down and stared straight ahead with his eyes wet. Our handshake at the end was barely a kiss. Just a moment of contact that meant we had both agreed to not pretend this was something it wasn't yet. When we walked back down the aisle together, I felt her grip ease slightly, like she'd been holding something, and just now realized she could set it down for a second. She was still in shock. I knew that. I didn't pretend otherwise. The reception hall had Rachel and Callum written in gold script on a banner above the entrance. The centerpieces had been chosen months ago. The seating chart still had Callum's name at the head table. A cousin of his, 2 tables over, spent the first hour making comments just loud enough. Imagine having a backup plan walk in off the street. His wife told him to stop. He didn't fully stop. Rachel kept her chin up. Every time I felt her tense beside me, I steered us towards someone else, refilled her water glass, blocked a sightline. Her friend Sylvie Hargrove, who had been maid of honor and had spent 40 minutes trying to reach Callum with no answer, pulled Rachel aside near the dessert table and held her for a while. When Rachel came back, her mascara was fixed and her expression was the same one she used in project debriefs when something had gone sideways and she had already decided how to handle it. Her father found me at the bar later. Henri Thibodeau had the handshake of a man who spent his 30s working manual trades before moving into building supply logistics. He didn't waste time. Do you have feelings for my daughter? I could have softened it. I didn't. Yes, for a while now. But that's not why I stood up. I stood up because the alternative was watching her be humiliated in front of everyone she loves. And I couldn't do that. He studied me the way you study a structure you're not sure will hold weight. That's either a very honest answer or a very clever one. It's just true, I said. He nodded once. My daughter is not someone who needs to be rescued, but she deserved to have someone stand in that room, and you were the only one who did. He paused. Don't make her regret that. Rachel had nowhere to go that night. The apartment she'd been staying in while she and Callum waited to close on a house was already handed off. Her parents were at a hotel across town with her aunts and uncles. Her best friend Sylvie had a one-bedroom. I offered her my apartment. I told her I'd take the couch, she'd take the bedroom, and we'd figure out everything else in the morning. She looked at me for a moment. Your apartment, you're sure? It's not fancy, I said, but I know where everything is. My building is a 6-story concrete block in the East End, built in 1978, last renovated somewhere around 2004. The elevator is reliable about 60% of the time. The hallway smells like floor cleaner, and someone's cooking from the 3rd floor, always. When I unlocked my door and stepped aside to let Rachel in, I felt the specific embarrassment of seeing your own place through another person's eyes. Safety training manuals on the coffee table. A hoodie over the back of every chair. A half-finished grocery list on the fridge that said milk, bread again, seriously get bread. Rachel looked around slowly. It's quiet, she said. I didn't know why that felt like the right thing to say. But it did. I gave her a pair of sweatpants and a work shirt. She changed in the bathroom. When she came out, the dress was gone, and she just looked like a person who was very tired and trying to decide whether to fall apart or not. I made tea. Something my mother used to make on bad nights. Rooibos with a little honey, because caffeine wasn't going to help either of us. We sat at my kitchen table. Rachel, I said, I need you to know something. Whatever I did today, you don't owe me anything. Not friendship, not gratitude, nothing. You can pretend today was a fever dream and go back to exactly how things were at work on Monday, and I will never once make it weird. She looked at her mug. People are going to think we planned this. Probably. There's already video, I figured. Someone is going to send it to my grandmother. She paused. She's going to love it, actually. She's 91 and she hates Callum. I almost choked on my tea. Rachel smiled for the first time all day. It lasted about 2 seconds and then faded, but it was there. What are my options, she said. Not really a question. Tell people it was a gesture, a moment of kindness, nothing more. Go back to normal, or don't go back to normal and see what this actually is, or something in between. I don't know. I don't think you have to decide tonight. She was quiet for a long time. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a streetcar went by on King Street. What do you want, Joel? Nobody had asked me that in a long time. Since Marcus died, I had mostly wanted to want less. Smaller stakes. Nothing I couldn't afford to lose. I want you to be okay, I said. And after that, I want to know you outside of work. Outside of today. Just you. Not the woman who got left at an altar. Not the woman I did something dramatic for. Just Rachel. Whatever that actually looks like. She looked at her hands. I don't trust my own judgment right now, she said. That's fair. Then don't make any decisions tonight. Just drink the tea. She looked up. Why rooibos? My mother swore it helped on bad nights. Does it? I don't know. I've had fewer bad nights since Marcus died, and she passed a few years after him. But it tastes like something she would have given me, so it helps for that reason. Rachel was quiet. And then she said, I'm sorry about your brother, just that. 3 words, but the way she said them, like she actually meant to land them, not just send them. Thank you, I said. Before she went to bed, she stopped at my bookshelf. On the second shelf, I have a photograph of Marcus and me at a job site in Oakville, early autumn, both of us in hard hats, both of us grinning like we'd just done something funny. She looked at it for a moment. That's him. Yeah, he looks like someone you'd want on your crew. He was the best, I said. He really was. She nodded and went to bed. I lay on the couch under a quilt my mother made and stared at the ceiling and thought, I have no idea what I just stepped into. And then I thought, I don't regret it. And that was true enough that I was able to sleep. The weeks after were careful and strange in the way that new things are when neither person wants to break them. Rachel went back to her sublet temporarily. We got coffee twice before it started feeling less like accident and more like intention. At work, she addressed the situation in a team meeting the same way she addressed project delays. Directly, without drama, leaving no room for speculation. My personal life changed significantly last month, she said, standing at the head of the conference table. I'm not going to make it your problem. If any of you need clarification on project assignments, I'm available. If you want to talk about my weekend, I'm not. The room adjusted itself around her. I had never admired anyone's composure more than I did at that moment. We started spending time together outside of the coffee shop. She'd come over on Sunday evenings and we'd cook something, usually pasta, because neither of us was trying to impress the other. And we'd talk for hours. She told me about her grandmother in Sudbury, who made tortilla from scratch every Christmas, and had strong opinions about people who didn't. I told her about growing up in Hamilton, my father on the line at Stelco before the layoffs, my mother cleaning office buildings at night to cover the gap, and how Marcus and I both went into trades because it was what we knew, and it turned out we were good at it. Rachel listened the way she did everything else, like it was information she intended to keep. Some nights she'd fall asleep on my couch with a site plan spread across her lap, and I'd cover her with the quilt from my mother and leave the lamp on low because she'd mentioned once briefly that she didn't sleep well in full dark. I didn't make a thing of it. I just left the lamp on. One Saturday in January, the power went out in the building for 3 hours. We were halfway through a card game she was winning by a significant margin. We finished it by candlelight. She won. I told her she'd cheated somehow. She said she'd file an incident report. We were both laughing about something else when I realized I hadn't thought about the ceiling above my couch in months. The one I'd spent 3 years staring at. I'd just stopped staring at it. She noticed the photo of Marcus on the shelf one evening and asked me to tell her about him. Not the accident, but him. What was he like? I talked for almost an hour. She asked questions the whole way through, the kind that meant she was actually listening. At the end, she said, "You became a safety coordinator because of him, didn't you?" I nodded. He'd think that was funny and also exactly right, she said. I didn't say anything. I just thought. She understood that in about 40 minutes when it took me 6 years to understand it myself. 3 months after the church, Rachel came with me to dinner at my cousin's place in Ancaster. 14 people around a table, the kind of family gathering that has its own ambient noise level and doesn't really pause for introductions. She didn't try to be impressive. She helped clear plates and ask my cousin's husband about his work and listened to my aunt's story about the city bus she used to drive with the same focus she gave to a project status report. On the way home, she put her hand on the gear shift next to mine. Not on my hand, just next to it, close enough that it meant something. "Your family is loud," she said. "Yeah, I liked it. I merged onto the highway. They liked you. Your aunt told me I have good hands for baking. I've never baked anything in my life." She says that to everyone she likes. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Then, "Joel, yeah, I want to try. For real. Not because of the church. Not because I don't have anywhere else to go. Because of Sunday pasta and the card game and the way you left the lamp on without ever saying why." I kept my eyes on the road. "I want that too," I said. "Then let's be honest about what we are," she said. "I don't want to pretend we're something dramatic. I just want to be something real." I reached over and put my hand on the gear shift next to hers. "Real? Works for me," I said. Our first actual kiss happened in my kitchen on a Wednesday night. While it was snowing, the kind of heavy wet snow Hamilton gets in early March that closes half the secondary roads by morning. No ceremony, no audience. Just two people who had been careful with each other long enough to decide they didn't have to be so careful anymore. Then Callum came back. He showed up at the Meridian office on a Tuesday in late spring, wearing the same kind of expensive coat I'd seen him in through lobby windows. He asked the receptionist to let Rachel know he was there. I was crossing the lobby when I heard him give his name and explain who he was. Her fiancé. I walked over. "She's in a site coordination meeting," I said. "And she's not your fiancé." He looked at me the way men like him look at men like me when they're deciding whether we're worth talking to. "You're the one from the church." "Joel Carver," I said. "And you're standing in the building where Rachel works, so..." He had prepared a version of events where his departure on the wedding day was a moment of overwhelm, a crisis of confidence. Something understandable that anyone who loved Rachel would want to hear explained. I listened to about 40 seconds of it before Rachel stepped out of the hallway. She stopped when she saw him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "Callum," she said. Her voice was level. He tried the speech on her. She let him finish. "You were unhappy for a long time," she said when he was done. "You could have told me that any time in those years. You chose a voice note on our wedding day. I don't think you wanted out. I think you wanted a specific outcome, and leaving was the quickest way to get it." He glanced at me. "You're making a mistake." He can't give you the kind of life. He leaves the lamp on when I'm sleeping, Rachel said. Callum blinked. What? You don't know what that means because you never paid that kind of attention. That's what I mean. She picked up her sight folder from the front desk. Goodbye, Callum. I hope you're well. She walked back toward the meeting room. I watched her go. Callum stood there for a moment, then left. That evening, he posted something on social media, a version of events where he'd been pressured into the church situation, where Rachel had moved on too quickly, where he'd been the one wronged. He tagged people. Screenshots started circulating. A few of Rachel's coworkers mentioned it to her in the kind of way that's half warning and half something else. I found her in the stairwell at the end of the day, sitting on the landing with her jacket pulled around her, reading comments on her phone. You don't have to read those, I said, sitting down next to her. I know. Then why are you? Because I want to know if any of it is true. She looked at me. Is it weird that I keep wondering if I moved too fast? If I just ended up with you because the alternative was walking out of that church alone? I thought about what to say, and then I said the only thing that was actually true. That's a fair thing to wonder. You should wonder it. And you should keep wondering it until you have an answer you actually believe. I'm not going anywhere while you figure it out. She looked at her phone, then she put it in her jacket pocket. I don't think that's why, she said finally. I think I had already made a decision about you a long time before that day. I just needed a situation big enough to make myself admit it. We sat on the landing for a while without talking. A few days later, Rachel posted something of her own. It wasn't long. She wrote that the past several months had been clarifying, that she'd started them in a way she hadn't planned and built something in them she hadn't expected. She wrote that the person who left didn't define the relationship she was in now. And the last line was, I'm not anyone's redemption arc. I'm just someone who finally chose a Tuesday night and meant it. Callum didn't respond. He faded. We kept living. Rachel's design work on project coordination had started attracting attention from clients who wanted her involved in interior specification, the actual finish and feel decisions, which was where her instincts had always been strongest. I'd been thinking about applying for a regional safety manager position that would mean more responsibility and a different kind of work, something I could actually build for a while instead of just maintaining. One night in November, she said, I love you. We were washing dishes after a dinner that had gone on 3 hours because neither of us wanted to stop talking. She said it the way she said things that mattered. Once, clearly, while she was still looking at the dishes. I turned off the tap. I love you, I said. I think I've been in love with you since before I let myself notice. She handed me the last bowl to dry. I know, she said. The soup. I was testing something. I laughed so suddenly it surprised both of us. In the spring, we took a weekend in Niagara on the lake, the first time we'd gone anywhere together that wasn't Hamilton. We walked the old main street in the rain with coffees from a place that had been open since before either of our parents were born. She stopped in front of a gallery window displaying a room installation, all light and texture and considered space. She didn't say anything. She just looked. That could be yours someday, I said. She turned. You always say that. Because you always look at beautiful spaces like you're measuring them. She looked back at the window. I'm going to do something about it, she said. Not to me, exactly. More to the room. I know you will, I said. A year after the church, Rachel stood in my kitchen on a Sunday morning and said she wanted to get married again. I put down my coffee. We are married. We had a ceremony of intention in October in front of your site manager and my grandmother's prayer circle and about 170 people who were not expecting any of it. She picked up her coffee. I want to choose it now, in front of the people who actually know us. Are you proposing? She shrugged. I'm scheduling. Rachel Benoit is scheduling her own wedding. It's a skill set. I accept, I said. The second ceremony was on a Saturday in late September at her parents' property outside Sudbury. Her father had a meadow behind the house that her mother had been keeping up for 20 years with the intention of someone eventually using it for exactly this. 43 people. A borrowed arch covered in spruce branches and late-season wildflowers. Henri Thibodeau walked her across the grass and shook my hand before placing hers in mine. Last time you held her together, he said quietly. This time you're just marrying her. That's the plan, I said. Good. I wore a dark blue suit I'd had fitted for the occasion. Nothing dramatic. Rachel wore a dress the color of cream with a pattern along the hem that her mother had added by hand. When she came across that meadow, she wasn't performing anything. She was just walking toward me. Our vows were different this time, I said. The first time I stood beside you, I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I wasn't going to watch you stand alone. Today, I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm choosing you, not because of one day that went sideways, but because of every Tuesday since then. Every bowl of pasta and every card game and every night I left the lamp on and didn't think twice about it because that's just what you do for someone you love. Rachel's voice was steadier than mine when she spoke. The first time I said yes to you, I needed something solid to hold. Today I say yes, because I know who you are. Because you told me about Marcus for an hour, and the whole time you were really telling me what it means to care about someone. Because you never once made me feel like I owed you something for being kind. Because I love you on the days when nothing happens, which is most of them, and that's what love is. We ate at long tables in the meadow until the sun went down and the string lights came on, and her grandmother danced with her father to a song I didn't recognize, but that clearly meant something to both of them. I drank one too many glasses of wine, and Rachel drove us to the inn where we were staying and laughed at me the whole way. 2 years later, she was leading her own interior specification work through a partnership with Meridian's architecture team. She'd built something out of the things she'd been doing quietly all along. I got the regional safety manager position, which meant I was spending more time preventing things from going wrong at a systems level, rather than just catching them on site. Marcus would have told me I'd become exactly what I always complained about. He wouldn't have been wrong. He also would have been proud. Rachel got pregnant on a February that felt like it would never end. When she showed me the test, we were standing in the kitchen in our housecoats at 7 in the morning. She didn't say anything. She just held it out. I looked at it for a long time, and then I sat down on the kitchen floor, which is not something I have done since I was about 11 years old, and she sat down next to me and we just stayed there on the tile for a while. We named our son Miles. Rachel said it because she liked the sound of it and because it felt like forward motion. I said yes, because when she said it, I immediately knew it was right. 5 years after that, October Saturday at St. Christopher's, I pulled into the Meridian parking lot after a site visit to find Rachel standing out front with Miles on her hip, waiting because her afternoon had cleared early and she thought she'd come say hello. Miles saw me get out of the truck and yelled my name in the way only a 3-year-old can, like it's an announcement to the whole neighborhood. Rachel laughed and hitched him higher on her hip, and I crossed the parking lot and took him from her arms, and he immediately grabbed my collar with both hands like he was claiming territory. "Callum called," Rachel said as we walked inside. I looked at her, left a message, said he'd been doing a lot of reflecting, said he hoped we were well. "Did you call back?" "I didn't need to," she said. "There wasn't anything he needed from me." She held the door open. "I'm not angry at him anymore. He made a choice and it became my life." She looked at Miles reaching for the lobby light switch. "This life, so." "Yeah," I said. "Order something good tonight. Miles wants dumplings. Miles wants dumplings every night. He has good taste," she said. "He gets it from me." That evening, the three of us sat on the floor of our living room with a box of dumplings between us and a show Miles had watched so many times he narrated it along with the characters. Rachel had her sketchbook out and was roughing something while she watched, pausing to add soy sauce to her dumplings, pausing to straighten Miles's collar without looking up. Existing in the complete and ordinary way, she did everything. I sat there watching and thought about a stone church in Burlington and 180 people, and the sound of my chair scraping back. I thought about the specific silence before I started walking. I thought about not knowing what would happen after, and walking anyway. And I thought, you can spend a long time making yourself small so nothing can hurt you. You can get good at that. You can be so careful that your life fits inside a safety manual and never surprises you. Or you can walk down an aisle toward a person who needs someone to stand beside them, and be surprised every day since. Miles fell asleep between us on the floor, one fist wrapped around his stuffed moose. Rachel leaned against my shoulder without looking up from her sketchbook. Outside, it started to rain. I didn't move.